Gary Lyon and welcome to Access All Areas. A weekend of upsets as the top 5 teams on the ladder all got toppled and the bottom side in the Swans produced a 9-goal thumping. It was a strange round of footy, Matty Lloyd and Damien Barrett.
It was, Gaz, and the AFL's almost got this competition where anything can happen on a weekend. First time since 1975 that the lower-ranked teams beat the high-ranked teams in a round of footy.
Staggering, and Hawthorn Footy Club were one of those, believe it or not.
And their big players stood up, Gaz, and Sean Burgoyne set the scene really, really well on the weekend. Some of his commitment and spoils and Roughead in the air was magnificent, but this was off the back of the stoppage, Gaz. They're up by 3 points.
40 seconds to go.
40 seconds to go. Did the right things at the right times, and obviously they've been up and down, these senior players, but they stood up when it was counted after a bad loss last week. 2
Burgoyne moments in this moment. Last roll of the dice, 5 seconds on the clock. Roughead pushed himself deep into defence and got the ball out of bounds. And they had good moments, and, you know, Isaac Smith played really well. But to have those moments, you need to have support. And I thought Tim O'Brien's performance, he wore the number 23, redhead, young centre-half forward, so there's some consistencies there. It took 10 marks, and he's shown glimpses of this. But if you said to Hawthorn, what do you need? Well, they need a few things, but a key position forward capable of playing for the next 10 years would be one of them. I reckon this boy is that.
Yeah, 5 of these marks contested as well, and I think the criticism at Hawthorn was, OK, they're going to lose Hodge, Burgoyne, Gibson, but who's coming through, Damo? So it'd be great for Hawthorn supporters to see that performance.
Can you put this down as a coming-of-age game?
You think so? Yeah, I reckon there's been times over the certainly last year, where he had those moments, but to put 10 together, and they were really important moments as well. So it's really nice to see. Hartung and Howe were better as well for the Hawks, which would be good.
The big challenge for Hawthorn, though, is they did this against West Coast. And then they go to Tasmania against St Kilda. They just didn't play emotionally. They weren't emotionally aroused. They played Brisbane in Tassie again this week. They've got to be ruthless to see that they're back.
Lloyd, what do you make of Jeff Garlett? More outside the play than inside the play, because he had a good contribution on the field. But you can see the score, you can see the stage of the game, and he's kicking this goal on Stratton. And then reminds him of it later on.
Some will say, what did Jeff do in the last quarter after this? He only had 1 touch. He's being a smarty pants. But when you're getting niggled off the ball, like Stratton will try and do to put him off his game, you've got to come back in some way. Jeff's not going to do it physically. So I've got no problems at all, him trying to get back inside Stratton's head. With this, some won't like it, but I had no issue with it at all.
What about you? Did you have an issue with that?
I would like him to back it up in the last quarter, like Lordo said, but until Matthew said that, it hadn't occurred to me that you are a bit limited in what you do.
All right, well, what about the club itself, the one you once famously represented, and one that was meant to be having a breakout year of sorts? It's not quite unfolding that way for the Demons.
It's not quite. Putting themselves into position, they've led or been equal in every single game they've played into the last quarter, and they've lost 4 of them. And at the same time, the side that they've compared to pre-season knocked over the GWS Giants on Friday night.
I'll give you some credit here in that you've said this, obviously knowing Melbourne better than any other side, you've said this at the start of the year. I cannot say Melbourne will play finals until they prove they can back up week after week, and nothing's really clear, is it?
About trusting performance, and that's what Simon Goodwin will be sitting here going, we've got to know what's going to happen next week, let alone looking that far ahead.
Is it the removal of Paul Roos, obviously with the defensive mechanisms he had and was criticised for at the expense of the attack, has that gone too far now with the attack?
I don't think so, because when they get it right, or when their mind's in the right place, they can play as good a footy as anyone. But it just doesn't happen often enough. Hey, I'll ask you this about the Hawks. Pre-game, O'Meara had been named, late withdrawal. What's the situation, as we know?
It's a worry. As it was a couple of weeks ago, we discussed this with the knee. It's the same knee that had all the problems. It is in a different part of the knee, but the whole structure of that knee is a problem. The club is very defensive about it, and I get that because of the investment they've made in him. But when you put out a release saying that he's a late withdrawal, having already missed a couple of games this year for the same knock, and then say that he's going to be requiring a solid block of conditioning before he returns, Lotto, I mean, that can have a few definitions, but a solid block of conditioning would suggest right now that they're conceding he's out for some time.
And when he has played, he's been really non-competitive. He hasn't ran the line, so they're better off not playing him until he's 100% right.
Hey, we had a look at the Swans last week. Clearly, without a win on the board, things are at their all-time low. I thought they hit rock bottom last week without the support for Callum Mills. Well, Mills took it upon himself. It looked much more like a Sydney. We identify with this Sydney more so than we have in recent times. The flying of the flag, supporting each other, buddy kicking 8. Making a mess of an inferior side. That's what we've come to expect of these Sydney sides. And there was
Where did it go? Particularly in round 6?
I don't know. I think when you've been up for that long, maybe you take it for granted and you stop working at it. You assume that it's going to happen, and then someone doesn't, and then the next person doesn't. And this is Hayward, is it? a young man that got upended, and then they all come in, and that's nothing heroic about it. But you just want to know as a footballer that you've got 17 mates that are prepared to support you.
It's extraordinary that in this day and age, Laura, that someone misses a compulsory training session, as Alir did the day before that particular game, was then forced to be out of the team, and then the club made him do this, Gaz, pre-match, go through the warm-up by himself.
And the irony in this is Harry Marsh, who he has his housemate, is the player that came in for him. Now, the conspiracy theorists think that Harry turned off his alarm clock.
A lot of clubs would actually try and hide the fact maybe that there's for disciplinary reasons. They might say it's an injury. I think they've had enough up there in Sydney, and they've decided, OK, let's put it out there. He was dropped 2 weeks ago, which surprised a lot of people.
It did.
Maybe it's because of the professional reasons.
Enough of him or enough of that type of behaviour
I'm just more saying, when you're 0-5, not playing with the passion, the energy, they've got to make a statement, and they hung him out to dry there on the weekend, which was good.
Nowhere to hide these days with 25 cameras on the ground and every game being covered live. And Daniel Rich had a moment that I think he'd want to take back. I don't think there's any question that he could.
Tell us why, Gaz, because we'll see this from another angle now, and then we'll go back to that initial angle. So you're talking about Daniel Rich in the centre of the ground there.
Yep. So this angle here you can't tell because you can think, he got a bad bounce. There's no question in my mind that he could have bodylined the ball and taken Callum Sinclair with him.
Are you overcooking that a little bit? Didn't the ball just bounce badly for him, and he might have had to take the legs if he...
No.
Wasn't you a bit harsh on him?
No. Okay. Let's go to Matthew.
He would want to never see that ever again, Damo.
Right.
Yeah.
I think you're both a bit harsh on him.
No, we're not, Damo. He is a smart enough and good enough player to have made that adjustment, and he chose not to make body contact, and that would... I'm not hanging him out to dry for that one, but he, as Lordy said, he wouldn't want that again.
The Dockers, we discussed them after the second round when they were 0-2, and they had that big meeting between coach and leadership group, and Ross Lyon put it on them. Since then, they've won 4 of 5. I think it needs to be acknowledged, even though the opposition, OK, let's say it's a little bit questionable at times, but 4 of 5, so from that moment when the season appeared to be going nowhere, it's a good turnaround.
Different Dockers. Different Dockers side, different personnel.
It is. Know what I loved about it? They kicked 110 points or something like that, and they just ran Essendon off their feet. Bradley Hill, he's been a phenomenal pickup. He had another 38 possessions.
And there's missed at Hawthorn Sam Mitchell.
Yeah, and what it was great to see too was Tabernar kicked 4. McCarthy's been good for them, and then Balak. So it's good signs.
Let's go back to Saturday night and have a look at the controversial, deliberate out-of-bounds ruling that was played against Jayden Short here. Did he try to do this deliberately? Did he just not seize the moment? Did he just fumble it?
What makes it hard for umpires is we have to look at this a number of times and say, was it deliberate, wasn't it? So that shows how tough it is. But when we look at this last angle, to me, it's bobbled out. This one, it looks deliberate, but then he's tried to grab it again. It bobbles out. So I think it should have been a throw-in.
I think he could have taken possession of that in that initial and chose not to, and then it was a genuine fumble. So there's a confusion. Now, I can understand why people get upset with that, but that's the nature of the game where we're at the moment.
The reason they won the grand final last year, in some ways, was the tight in work, the handball, and what they did late in this game, Gaz. And Bontempelli here, just have a look at the amounts of work he does here, in close and in hard, and this creates a goal. It wasn't just him, but this is crucial at this stage of this game.
And what I love, it still wasn't as smooth and as slick and as, free-flowing as what you'd hope, but they stuck at it and they believed in it, and then you got out. Even there, it was still not quite there, and then they got out. So this is a side who's committed to playing in a particular way, and irrespective of whether it's going as, at 100%, even if it's 70%, they're going to stick at it, and they find a way, and they did, and that's a great sign.
Just never beaten the Western Bulldogs, and they've won 3 games they probably weren't entitled to win, just through heart and also that run-off halfback.
OK, Phil Davis, Lordo, was really demonstrative with one of his own teammates, Rory Lobb, at this stage of the game against St Kilda, which they lost. What do you make of it? It's unusual.
I don't like it. I know Phil's doing what's best as a captain. He's not happy with the way his team was playing, but I've never known a player to respond to treatment like that. I know you've got to know your teammates. Devon Smith, I'm fine with this one because Devon's one of those people you have to say, Devon, listen to me, because you're not doing what we need to. But Big Lob, I thought he lost his confidence after that. When you get shoved in the chest, you tell me anyone who likes being spoken to or pushed that way.
Well, that's the first real good look at that. I'd only say you can pick your mark sometimes as a captain, and there would be the odd player in your side who would almost look at you and want that physical. I'm not saying Rory's that player.
He didn't seem to like it, did he?
No, he didn't. Maybe that smacks of a footy club, and I know you've been critical over the weekend of a young group who are headstrong and they need. Maybe Phil Davis saying, well, someone's got to stand up, someone's got to take control, and I'll be the bad guy. maybe just got to restrain it a bit.
Lordy, the win by the Saints, do we now take them seriously by way of being a potential top 4 finish?
Well, they were disappointing against Geelong in that last quarter a few weeks ago, but they couldn't have been more emphatic in their last 2 weeks to smash Hawthorn like they did, and then what they did the other night. 5 goals to 1 in the last quarter. That's what we've been waiting to see from St Kilda for a long time. And it was their second-tier players, Gaz, that it wasn't Revolt anymore, it wasn't Montagna, it was that second wave of players.
I reckon the list management group at St Kilda would be thrilled because we know Nick wants to play on, and I would have him play on as well, but it'd be played on St Kilda's terms because he's no longer a key forward. In fact, he mucked the forward setup up in the first half. Once they got him out of there, it operated better. So big wins all round.
And no matter what happens this year, it's going to get better next year. They have got money to burn post-season.
There was on-field recruiting going on.
Yeah, there is. And Joe Montagna, who's one of those guys like Nick Revolt, will have to play under their terms. But he's recruiting here, Gaz.
No question about that.
Josh Kelly.
The AFL need to investigate this.
But maybe Lee doesn't know. Kelly will have to take some of his money maybe to stay. So
that wouldn't have been great if he turned around and said, "Oh, come, you're out." Groundhog Day, Collingwood, here we are, inside 50s, there it goes again, they play against the side. I mean, let's not underestimate what this game was about. It was a 125-year celebration. They had Eddie and now everyone addressed them through the week. They had the big function that night. They had the Guard of Honour as the players come out. It's just a huge loss. This is as bad as a loss for the year for them. It
was a bad loss, and Brendan Bolton is a super coach, and I thought, again, he coached better than Nathan did on the day. We can all talk about the matchups. Why wasn't Levi Greenwood tagging? Why was he on a half-forward flank? But look at the forward line. Cox had 4 possessions. Fasolo had 6. Darcy Moore had 6. Hoskin had 11.
Are you worried about the coaching within the game as well as what they're doing by way of preparation?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think that,
Doesn't do enough once that goes against the flow?
I just think at times, I know Ben Reid was their best defender, but when does he ever go forward? When does Howe for 15, 20 minutes go forward? When's anything happen within games? It changes a dynamic. I don't think it happens.
So what you saw against Carlton, seemingly the way you're talking now, worried you more than anything you've seen
structurally and matchups on the spur of the moment.
And the easiest thing of all is to say, why didn't Levi Greenwood go to Mark Murphy? But why didn't Levi Greenwood go to Mark Murphy? I mean, that's not rocket science either. Sam Petreski-Seaton, young kid, pick number 7. Player.
Oh, he's a brilliant player, and some will say he was the best in the draft. He went to pick 7. They bought him in off no pre-season form. That's how highly they rate him at Carlton. His work rate's always going to be the biggest question mark. Can he get 30 disposals a game? But at this stage, he's like Cyril Rioli. Pick 6 in the draft he was, sorry. He's like Cyril Garrett. Every touch is huge.
Well, this is a baseline of only half a dozen games. He's just going to get better and better. And some players just are comfortable in this sort of heat and traffic, and that's a really good sign. Eagles took on Port Adelaide at Adelaide Oval, won the game, went home. We sit here today going, is this proof definitive that they are not flat-track bullies?
I'm with you in the way you're talking about this, but you've got to give them some credit. I know they've got a good record at that venue, 5 of 6 now they've played at Adelaide Oval, but let's give them some credit because we have ridden them, and the 2 losses being in Melbourne, Richmond and Hawthorn. But look, let's say it was a good win because it was. I mean, Port Adelaide kept coming at them. They required, precise bits of play like this. I thought it was really good work.
Yeah, no doubt. I reckon the Western Bulldogs are there to be beaten. So Friday night is the next challenge. Western Bulldogs in Perth this Friday night. Yeah. I reckon they're ripe for the picking. They're just winning games, and they got smashed in the final last year.
You've got to respect that. There's no doubt. But the fact of the matter is,
we don't know anymore,
Adelaide Oval's not an issue for them. They've won 5 or 6 there. The MCG's the issue. So we'll sit tight. Quick word: Cats lost 2 in a row now. Favourites?
Yeah, I just think the pace gets them. I thought Taylor and Lonigan looked really slow on the weekend, and also I think when the top enders don't play well, the same thing happens. The bottom falls out of them. So 2 bad losses.
Yeah, they are a watch, the Cats, no question. It's time now for our lift hard-hitting moments. I'm going to kick things off here and, big Jeremy McGovern, bang! Down you go. Not sure if Jeremy helped him up or not, but bang! And it's a good effort to get Robbie Gray.
I think mine trumps yours, Gaz. Kane Turner, the mighty North Melbourne youngster, against Luke Brown. Right. Pretty tough.
You've been quiet on the Kangaroos too.
Well, they've been good the last 2 weeks.
And just on this one, we saw Daniel Rich not go hard enough before. Jaron Geary, it's one of the reasons he became the captain of the football club. Doesn't matter how big the player is, he'll take him down. Great tackle there in a big moment on Jonathan Patton.
Was it holding the ball?
No prior.
Very nice work, boys. Very nice to see you. Thanks once again, everyone, for joining us on Access All Areas. We'll see you next week. Goodbye.